So hi, hello and welcome, and in today's video I'd like to talk about the characteristics of living organisms, and specifically I'd like to answer the question, what do all living things have in common? And I brought along a few of those living things. Look here on the side, this here is moss that I collected in a forest a few days ago. I've got, a fly. I caught a fly here, I put it into this little glass container so that it's not going to fly away. A tomato, of course, and here my favorite. You know what this is? This is yogurt. I love yogurt. And you might be a little bit surprised, but yogurt also contains many living things. As a matter of fact, billions and billions of yogurt bacteria that ferment the milk and turn the milk into yogurt. And those yogurt bacteria and the moss and the fly and the tomato and even me, I myself, a human being, we share certain things and we have many things in common. Well, maybe not many things, but there are 7 items that we have in common, and I'd like to show them to you now. But first I want to have to clear my desk a little bit. Also, we carefully remove the fly. Okay, and what about the tomato? What I'm going to do with the tomato? I'm going to eat the tomato. I don't want to waste any food. And look here, the answer is beneath the label here. Okay, these are seven characteristics that all living things have in common. And what I'd like to do now is I'd like to go through those 7 characteristics. I'm going to explain them. And then later on, we're going to do a little matching activity where we're going to add the definition and also an example. And if you want to do this also at home, then look what I got here. There is a little printout that you can download, and then you can cut it out using scissors. And then you can also do this activity. As a matter of fact, I recommend that you actually cut it out and try it out, because it's not the easiest activity and made it a little bit difficult. So let's go through it, and I'm just going to start somewhere. The first one, movement. Okay. All living things are able to move. Okay. So for example, even plants. You might be a little bit surprised. For example, sunflowers, they turn their head towards the sun. Plants are able to grow towards light, for example. So even if they appear not to be moving, they actually move, okay? Or many of them at least. So let's put it over here. Another one, sensitivity. What is that? All living things display sensitivity. This means that living things are able to respond to the changes in their environment. So for example, when I feel too hot, then what am I going to do? I respond. I stand up, open the window, I get some fresh air. Other living things are able to move towards sunlight, for example. For certain photosynthetic algae, they're able to go towards sunlight, and so on. So they do different things, but all of them have the possibility to sense their environment. Growth. Living things are able to grow. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. What happens here is that by the food that living things take in, or that they make, this food then becomes part of the body of the organism, and this causes the organism to grow. So in other words, I've just eaten a tomato, and after I've digested the tomato, then some of the nutrients in the tomato are then going to be used to make new body cells, and my hair starts to grow. And so the tomato nutrients are converted into my own body cells, and this allows me to grow and to repair. Respiration, all living things do that as well. This basically means that the food is burned up and energy is released. So the cells in our body, what they do is they use the food source as an energy source, and this is called respiration. So another one, nutrition here, that's actually feeding. So all living things have to somehow obtain food, and plants, for example, what they do is they're able to make their own food by photosynthesis. And for example, fungi, they have to break down organic material, and also humans have to do that, and animals have to do that. There are many possibilities. Reproduction. And in the case of reproduction, living things are able to multiply, and they are able to make copies of themselves. Okay, it's also very important. And last but not least, excretion. And excretion means that there are waste products being produced, and those waste products have to be released again. So in the case of human beings, the waste product is carbon dioxide. And in plants, for example, what they make is they make oxygen as a waste product. Okay. So, yeah, I've basically arranged them here now on the side. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove, look what I've got this hidden behind here. Here we've got the definitions and also the examples. And what you can do now is you can now pause the video and stop the video, and you can now try to match it yourself. So next to it, try to put the definitions. So let's do the first one together maybe. Organisms need food for growth and energy. What could that be? Okay, organisms need food for growth and energy. Is that movement? No. Sensitivity? No. Growth? No. They need food for growth, but that's not growth itself. Also not respiration. Well, actually it is nutrition. Okay, so it belongs here. Okay, and so you can now look also for the example, and you can put the example next to it. And what you can do now is you can pause the video and you can try it yourself. And when you're finished with it, then you can start the video again, and then I'm going to solve the rest here. So welcome back now. The characteristics of living organisms are here now on the side, and we're now going to complete the table. I would suggest that later on that you put everything into your notebook, and don't forget about a title, okay? And also some column headings as well. So let's take the first one. I just randomly picked one. These are chemical reactions inside cells which release energy for the organism. Chemical reactions inside cells that release energy. All organisms need energy, and this is called cell respiration, or simply respiration. And when respiration happens, then the molecules, the food molecules that we've eaten, are broken down and energy is released, because all living things need energy. Now let's have a look at the second one, at the next one. Organisms or parts of the organisms are able to change their position or place. Okay, that is also relatively easy. If you're able to change your position, then you're able to move, and that is movement. Okay. You might be a little bit surprised, because those definitions, they sound kind of scientific, but that's the whole point here. We have to get used to the scientific language a little bit. The size of the organism increases, and also their dry mass. I need to explain a little bit what dry mass is, but you might have already guessed that when the size becomes bigger, then this is growth. Now, dry mass is the mass of an organism minus the water content. And the reason is that the water shouldn't count, because the water, can be taken up and given off by an organism quite easily. But what we want to do is we want to only look at the material without the water, and that is called the dry mass. Yeah. Let's have a look at the next one over here. Organisms can make more of their own kind. Yeah, if you can make more of your own kind, then you're reproducing. All living things are able to reproduce. Some of them do that by cell division, others do that by sexual reproduction, then others by asexual reproduction. There are a variety of possibilities here. Well, not a variety of possibilities, but in any case, different reproductive methods do exist, but of course, all of them have to do that. Organisms can remove waste products. This is an excretion. In the case of human beings and animals, for example, this would be carbon dioxide gas. And here's another one. What does this one say? Organisms can respond to changes in their outside environment and their inside environment. This is sensitivity. When I feel hot, I stand up and open the window. I'm able to sense hunger, and then I'm going to eat something that would be responding to my inside environment. And organisms need food for growth and energy. That is nutrition here. So we're not quite finished yet. I still have a little bit of space here, because I'd like to continue now and talk about the examples, because I think the examples might be a little more difficult and challenging. What happens? An apple tree produces apples. What's going on here now? Well, you can of course say, well, in the apples there are seeds, and those seeds are important for reproduction. This could be a possibility, but what I actually meant here is that this is actually growth, okay? The production of apples is actually growth as well, and an increase in the dry mass of an apple tree, but I understand if you might have included it somewhere else as well. A sunflower is turning towards the sun. This is movement. I picked this example to show to you that plants also are able to move. Next one is yeast using sugar and breaking it down to release energy. Haha, I'm giving you a hint here. This is respiration. As a matter of fact, I'm going to show you a video of this happening. Yeah? And moss making glucose. Remember the moss? This one over here? Yeah. It is able to do photosynthesis, and it produces glucose, and that is a form of nutrition. This is how plants feed themselves. This is by photosynthesis. Cyanobacteria, they're producing oxygen gas. They're producing gas. How is this possible? Well, they do that because of photosynthesis, and the oxygen gas is a waste gas. So I'm going to put it in here. It's excretion. A salmon, that is a fish, is swimming up a river. This is strange. A sunflower turning towards the sun, and a river, that actually is also motion. A salmon swimming up a river. That's movement. And a sunflower turning towards the sun actually is also movement. So do we have two examples here? That's a little bit strange. And here, a paramecium divides to form two cells. And that is then reproduction. But I'm a little bit worried about the first one over here. A salmon swimming up a river. Okay, I mean, that's moving. And a sunflower turning towards the sun, that is also motion. But what about sensitivity? Interesting, towards the sun. Maybe it is able to sense the sunlight, and therefore it's turning towards the sun. So maybe sensitivity would be a better place here, and the salmon swimming up the river might be a better example of movement. But then again, the salmon is swimming up a river because it wants to go back to the place where it was born. So maybe it is also sensing something there. And how does it know where to swim? That's a little bit strange here. But you see, sometimes the characteristics can overlap. Okay, and sometimes when an organism does one thing, it's doing a second thing at the same time. So it's very common in nature that those characteristics are not completely separate from each other. And I'm going to show you a video or several videos where this is the case. Now, when you put this table into your notebook, I would like to ask you, of course, include a title. Of course, never forget a title, and also include column headings. So over here in the first heading, you might want to include the characteristic, then definition, and example. And not only that, I would like to give you an assignment as well. The assignment is to find further examples of the different characteristics of life. So you pick a few of your favorite animals, like jellyfish. How is that? And then you research a little bit. How does the jellyfish move actually? How is a jellyfish able to grow? And how does a jellyfish reproduce? That's kind of interesting. So maybe you can pick, let's say, 2 or 3 different living things and try to pick 2 or 3 of those characteristics for each one of them, and then try to research a little bit how they are actually doing that. Okay, that would be another activity that I would like to ask you to do, and then you can include this as well into your notebook. But now I would like to show you some of the videos that I promised, because those videos actually are quite nice, because they illustrate quite nicely some of those points here. And I would like to show you, start off with this here. What is that? Well, these are moving chloroplasts. So what we're looking at here, we're looking at plant cells, and those plant cells, they do photosynthesis, and inside the plant cells you have those chloroplasts that are responsible for photosynthesis. And what do? They move. Yes. So even if you think that plants are not moving, if you look deep enough into the cells, you are able to see movement. Of course, this is time lapse, so I've made it a little bit faster. But movement is not the only thing here. What they're also doing is they are doing nutrition. Why? Because using photosynthesis, they are making their own food. So as I told you before, sometimes different living things are doing several things at the same time. Okay, so you can actually say movement and nutrition, and maybe even what about excretion, because when it's doing photosynthesis, it's producing oxygen gas as a waste product. Okay, so this one was the first one. That is a water plant with a moving chloroplasts. Look, plant movement. I'm going to show you another one. This one is actually one that I filmed at a botanical garden. Look, I'm touching the leaf, and look what happens. I'm touching the leaf. Look, I'm carefully touching the leaves, and the leaves fold up. The name of the plant is mimosa, and they're able to do movement. And not only that, which second one? Well, what about sensitivity? They're able to respond to touch. Again, here we see that there's a combination of different characteristics happening at the same time. Let's look at it again. Yeah, all you have to do is you have to touch it lightly, and then the leaves fold up. Yeah. It looks kind of nice, huh? Yeah, so plants are able to move, and plants are also able to respond to stimuli, to changes in their environment. Yeah. So another one, this is a favorite one, the next one. So it's known as a moss piglet or a tardigrade. Yeah, I got it out from the moss that I showed you. And it's a micro animal. It's a very tiny microscopic animal. It's made of many cells, around 1,000 cells, has 8 legs, and it's moving around. So here we again see movement, but of course we already knew that animals are able to move, but why is it moving around? Well, it's looking for something. What is it looking for? Well, food. Okay, so you see again nutrition. Animals have to find some food, and then you can actually see that it's eating something. Yeah, so that is a tardigrade, or also known as a moss piglet or a water bear. This little animal comes in, all of it has 3 names: tardigrades, moss piglets, or water bears. So these here are Paramecia. Paramecia are single-celled microorganisms. And what they do is, well, they move around and they're looking for food. And look very carefully. Maybe you're able to notice that when they bump into an object, maybe into another paramecium or into something else, then they're able to reverse their direction and move into the other way. A little bit like bumper cars, I would say. And this shows that they are able to display already several of the characteristics of life. They're able to respond to the environment, so they are able to show sensitivity. They are able to feed themselves, that's nutrition, and of course they're able to move. Something that I'm going to show you a little bit later is reproduction and how they are able to divide. So even though those Paramecia are tiny in size compared to us human beings, we basically share a lot of similarities with them, and this kind of makes it kind of fascinating. Some people asked me in the past, do they have a brain? No, they do not have a brain. They are not animals. They are ciliates or protists, and they still are able to respond to their environment and to do all of those complex activities, even though they're so much simpler than we humans are. But they simply do it differently. They're able to do all of these things without a brain. So now let's move on to the next one. Those little round structures, these are yeast cells. Yeah, you can quite easily buy them when you want to make bread, for example, or cake. Very often you need yeast, and you can buy dry yeast in pretty much every supermarket. And look carefully, they're also moving around. Well, but this movement is a random movement called Brownian motion. They're not moving on their own, really, but they're able to do something else that I've not talked about yet so much. Look, that some of them appear to be double. Okay, some of them appear to be double, and the reason is because they're dividing. So over here towards the side, you see maybe some of them. Usually there's a larger one and a smaller one sticking together, and this this type of division or reproduction is called budding, where a smaller cell comes out from a larger cell, a form of reproduction. And this yeast also is able to reproduce. But there's another yeast video that I'd like to show to you, and this other yeast video shows, as a matter of fact, I need to shows over here. We go. Look at those round large bubbles. These are carbon dioxide bubbles. It's again in time lapse. Look how they're growing Yeah, of course, it's much faster than in real life, but the yeast is producing carbon dioxide. I added a little bit of sugar as well, and the yeast is now doing respiration. So again, we have here, this video shows respiration and at the same time excretion, because carbon dioxide is a waste gas. Yeah, so it's quite nice to see how those bubbles are growing, and the yeast are those little dots between the bubbles that are floating around. Of course, everything is also in water, but those CO2 bubbles, those carbon dioxide bubbles, they are growing and growing. Yeah, that's an example of excretion and at the same time respiration. And I would like to show you now also a very nice one, the last one that I'd like to show you. Look, that's again Paramecium, and look what it's doing. Yeah, it's dividing. Yeah, it's a close-up. And over here it is, oh yeah, divided already even more. It's almost separated, but not quite yet. We still have to wait a little bit. I was actually observing it for quite a long time under the microscope. And you can also see that, yeah, there are little hair moving. The so-called the cilia that are beating. Now it's almost separated. And just in a second or so, they're going to separate completely, and then the whole cycle starts again. Yeah, they're still a little bit connected. You cannot see the connection quite well, but now they're separate, okay? And now the division process is complete, and every cell will now continue to live on its own. Yeah, the video starts again. You can see that here it was one cell that just started to divide. So this is, of course, again, an example of reproduction. Yeah, so this is basically, these were the most important characteristics, characteristics of life. What again, a little summary, movement, sensitivity, growth, respiration, nutrition, reproduction, and excretion are 7 characteristics that can be found in all living things. Yeah, some people add a few more, others have some less, but generally those characteristics can be found in all of them. And if you might wonder, what about viruses? Where do viruses fit in here? Well, viruses are not considered alive because they do not do these things. Yeah. For example, viruses, they can reproduce, but actually they have to use a cell to do that. They cannot do it on their own even. Yeah. And for this reason, viruses are not considered alive. They don't feed themselves. They don't grow. In the sense that we consider growth by division of cells. No. Sensitivity, no. Many of them simply don't take place in viruses, and therefore viruses are not considered alive. Yeah, so again, put everything into your nice notebook, and if you do not have enough space to arrange it like this, then I have another recommendation. So I'm going to put it away, and we're just going to use the first one as an example. What you can do as well is you can make a nice large subheading called movement, and then you add the definition, and then you add the example, and then you can also add a second researched example beneath it. And and you leave enough space and don't cram everything together. I think maybe this is even a better method than having a table, because a table might be a little bit too tight. And then you have to write so small, and then you're not able to read your handwriting. For this reason, I think I've decided that maybe this is a better arrangement. You do that, what works for you. Just leave enough space and make sure that you still have enough space to make corrections later on.